Welcome back to the His and Her Money Show with America's #1 money couple. I'm Talaat.
And I'm Tai, and we're from hisandhermoney.com, where we're managing money, marriage, and everything in between.
We're so excited that you guys are back here for another great edition of the show because we have an awesome debt freedom story to share with you. We're going to be talking with Bobby Hoyt from millennialmoneyman.com, and he's going to be sharing his story of how he was able to pay off all of his student loans, and he did it in under 2 years.
Amazing.
He shares his whole story from start to finish, and it's surely going to inspire you.
So let's take a listen.
Hey, Bobby, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, Bobby.
Hey, guys.
We're glad that you're here with us today because you have an awesome story of attaining debt freedom, which is something that many people that are tuned into the show right now have a strong desire to do, and they can really use some motivation on their own journey. And you are a great source of that motivation, being that you are able to accomplish such a grand feat. Before we get into the details of your personal journey to debt freedom, can you just take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody and let them know what you're all about?
Yeah, my name is Bobby Hoyt, and I run a website called millennialmoneyman.com. And about a year ago, I started doing it full time. Before that, I was a band director. I had $40,000 of student loan debt that I paid off in 18 months. So now I write about personal finance and I write about loans, and that's pretty much what I do full time now.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the debt. Did the entire debt that you have, was it all just student loans, or did it also consist of like credit card debt or auto loans?
Actually, I was pretty fortunate to not get into the credit card thing early and the car loan. So it was all student loan debt.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
Now, what is the big deal? Everybody's got student loan debt, Bobby. So you were living a life that's typical that most Americans are living. There was nothing abnormal about your financial situation if you look at the culture as a whole, but something happened. Something made you say, this isn't the life that I want to live. I don't like being in this debt, and I'm going to do something about it. Talk to us about what was that turning point? What was that eye opener that made you want to do this?
Well, first of all, you're right. A lot of people do live that way, and I just did everything that I thought I was supposed to do. And, I still think that student loans are a good investment for a lot of people. But for me, the turning point was after I graduated from college. A family friend of my wife, successful businessman, a multimillionaire, very, very successful man, took us water skiing one day. And we live by the water in Texas. So he took us water skiing, and he asked me about my student loans. And he just said, how are you going to pay him off? And I just kind of looked at him and was like, well, I'm going to make the minimum payment. I mean, that's what you do. And his answer really changed everything. He just basically said, no, you're not. And he kind of instructed me to go ahead and start making the biggest payments that I could. And that, I guess impressed upon me how important it was if I wanted to be successful one day, that I really needed to pay these loans off as quickly as possible. So that was really the turning point for me. And that really changed really the course of my career, as well as obviously being debt free.
So let's talk about that a little bit further. I think it's remarkable to have someone of wisdom. I like to say, to be able to drop that knowledge and let you know, like, no, you're not going to do this. You should get out of debt. So talk about that process. I'm sure that lingered on in your mind for days, like, wow, what he said. And then how did you approach your wife about this?
Well, my wife, she was a lot smarter than me in high school, so she didn't have student loans. She was a much better student than I was, and so she got through college with no debt. So she was on board from the beginning. I think and this man's name is Jim. He's still a great friend of mine. He's one of my mentors. He helps me through business. Now, when he told me that, the way the conversation came up was the lake that we ski on is beautiful. It's got all these mansions and so I was looking at them and I was like, I want one of those someday. And I will never forget this. He looked at me and he was like, you're a teacher and you have $40,000 student loan debt. You're not gonna have one of those houses with that situation. And it was just so real, and it was one of those things where I was like, man, he's right. I won't get there like that. And so for me, it was pretty much instant. I was still really impressionable back then. I was 22, but even at that point, you're really young. And when somebody successful tells you something like that, hopefully you listen. And I was very lucky that I actually listened more than I did to like my parents or friends or whatever. So that was really the turning point. It didn't take me long to figure out that that's what I wanted to do.
I'm curious, the successful gentleman that was giving you the advice, what was his reasoning as he was telling you, you know what, student loans are not the answer. You need to get rid of them. What was his convincing points behind it? Why did he say that you need to do something about it?
Well, he is the typical millionaire next door that we all hear about. I mean, he's not flashy or anything like that, but he's completely debt free, owns his house, owns his business, owns everything outright. And so for whatever reason, that I got lucky enough to meet him, and he thought that that was important. And so, there's a lot of people like him out there. You just don't meet them very much because they don't talk about it. So I got really lucky in that respect. I really feel like I was very fortunate to meet him on that particular day because I didn't know him before.
Wow. So what were some of the, you got the advice. What were some of the strategies that you used from a practical standpoint? What were some of the action steps that you took once you realized that what he was saying was true and that you need to do something about it? What is it that you did do?
Well, for us, my wife graduated from college before me, so she was living with her parents. And so what we did, and this was like right after I graduated, so we actually made the decision right after that to rent a room from them and move in with them. And the situation was a little bit hard because my wife's father was he had been diagnosed with a disease called inclusion body myositis at that time. And basically it's like muscular dystrophy. And so they needed some help with him as his disease progressed. And so it just was kind of the natural thing to move in with them and rent. And it felt right to do that. And we were able to help them. They helped us. And then I kept my old car that I had throughout college. And I literally went on a spending ban. I didn't buy clothes. I bought a few outfits for work, but just enough to get through like a week and a half or 2 weeks. So I had to cycle them out. We didn't go out to eat. We just didn't really do anything. And my wife was saving money on her own. And then I put all of my money towards my student loans that I could. So that was really the strategy, was just kind of to avoid lifestyle inflation. We hear that as like money people, but just really not to get started on that path of financing things and trying to keep up with my friends.
Talk about the importance of letting your friends know, your wife, your in-laws, your family know, okay, guys, this is the plan. I want to hurry up and get out of debt, and so I'm going to need your help. Talk about that, because I think a lot of people, they're in your same situation, but they have family and friends. They don't know how to approach them. They don't know how to tell them, look, guys, this is actually hurting me. You telling me or asking me to come out every weekend, I can't really say no, but it's hurting me. My goal is to get out of debt.
Yeah, that's a great one too, because I get that question so many times. There's so many people that are my age that either want to move back in with their parents and rent from them, or want to go out to eat and do all that stuff. I think the biggest thing for me is that I just realized early that if I let my friends all pass me up and try not to care about what they really thought about it, I would be better in the long run. So my friends they're good people. They didn't give me too much of a hard time. As far as talking to my wife's parents about it, it was kind of a no-brainer, just like I said, because of their situation and because I had a financial goal. And I think that that's the biggest deal. There's a lot of people that move back in with their parents now, and the stigma is that they just freeload and go party. But I made it very clear from the beginning that, I need to get ahead, and my wife and I need to get ahead. And so if you can contribute like we were able to do, it really helps that situation and helps that kind of understanding between you and them. And then your friends see you start to pass them up, and then they're
asking you for advice, right?
Yes, all the time. Yeah.
Now let's talk about it. You kind of hit on something. There are tons of people who do move back home, and
that's becoming the norm. Actually, I love it.
Yeah, and they have the thought that moving back home will allow me to free up some cash to be able to hit some financial goals. But a lot of times they do get caught up in that free cash becoming not what they intentionally planned, and they don't maintain the discipline that they initially went into the situation with. We've seen it personally with people that we've counseled. For you, how were you able to maintain the discipline? Because it's one thing to have this great idea, this great plan, this great strategy. It's another thing to be disciplined enough to execute it. So when you moved in and rented this room, you freed up some cash that you could have done some other things with. How did you maintain your discipline to continue to focus that freed up cash towards your debt freedom goal?
Yeah, well, for me, when the second that paycheck dropped into my account every 2 weeks, I made the biggest student loan payment I could. And so I got rid of the money immediately. And I mean, once it's gone, it's gone. Once Sally Mae has it, you can't do anything with it. And so that was probably the biggest thing for me because, I didn't want to get into those pitfalls that a lot of people fall into. And I just have the kind of personality that when I want to do something, I do it very passionately. So, and obsess about it. And so I was obsessed with paying off my loans. Like I wanted to get them done very quickly. And so I was able to do that, but really just getting rid of the money fast or, first, it was the trick for me.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite tips or tricks or tools. I tell people, throw that money at your debt right away. I don't care if it's $20. I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $10. Of course, contact the institution and make sure that there's no like prepayment penalties and all that stuff, and that, they will apply it directly towards principal and stuff like that without just holding it. But I think that that's so important, get rid of the money as quickly as possible. You don't have to wait for the due date in order to pay your bills. You could pay it. I mean, oh my gosh, you could just pay it every day if you wanted to, So yeah, I think that's great. I love that. So were there any obstacles that you had to overcome along the way during this 18 months? Was there anything that came up that, okay, you possibly maybe had to pause your debt-free journey, or was there any discouragement? What was it? Was there any obstacles that came along the way that you had to overcome?
There wasn't really discouragement. I think that for me, I had a kind of different perspective because of my wife's father being sick. When you experience that, and we were very close with him, he passed away in June. When you experience that, your perspective on life changes a lot. And unfortunately, we had to go through that early. But I think that for us, the good thing that did come out of it is that we know now that short-term goals are not as important as the big long-term goal. And so I really feel like seeing that situation and understanding how important it was to be debt-free, because my wife's parents were debt-free at that point. And when you have illness in the family, and a lot of people know this, like end of life is not cheap. It's very expensive. And so that was something that kept me motivated, and it was a good thing that came out of the situation. So really having that perspective of knowing what's important and what's not important was big for me.
You know what? I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because we can also relate to that as well too. When we sold our home a few years ago, I had to go live with my in-laws, which was my husband's parents, and we stayed there for about, how many months was it?
10 months.
10 months, right? Loved it. Enjoyed it, okay? Every single second of it. So grateful for that time. But then my father-in-law passed not even a year later. And I believe it was probably like 9 months later. Mm-hmm. But I remember, having to deal with the death of a loved one is traumatic in itself, But my mother-in-law didn't have to worry about anything. Their home was already paid for. She didn't have to worry about the financial part of it. She was able to grieve and mourn, and not have to worry about, oh my gosh, do I need to go get a job? How are we going to pay for the bills? How am I going to pay for my medication, my prescription? Everything was handled and taken care of. So I think that that's so important, that I want our listeners, to keep in mind when you're on this road to getting out of debt. You're not just doing it just so you can go on some trip, around the world, or buy this beautiful car, this beautiful home. I mean, you are doing it, and it's going to affect everybody around you, your family included. So I'm happy that you brought up that point. I think that was one of the things that I remembered during that time of ours as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's so important, but nobody likes to talk about it, obviously. I mean, but so much of personal finance is about the entire scope of life, and I think a lot of people, like you said, boil down to like, I want to go on a vacation or I want to do this. And I think once you have that perspective of what's really important in life, it's easier to hit those goals financially, because a paid off house and no car debt and that kind of thing. That's huge later. I mean, it's just huge.
Yeah. And, and I remember having a conversation with my father-in-law, like he knew that he was going to pass.
Yeah.
But he would tell me he was not worried about his wife, my mother-in-law. He said she's going to be okay, because he knew that he made sure that he put everything in place financially so that she was going to be okay. So I think he was able to
have peace.
He was able to have peace and just leave, Mm-hmm. And I remember that will forever be imprinted in my heart.
Now, as I reflect on your story, you're fresh out of college. You got a young marriage. At the same time, you're fighting your way out of debt. At the same time, you're dealing with health challenges of your in-law, all at the same time. What type of impact did all of this totality of your journey have on your marriage?
Well, for us, my wife and I, we've been together for a long time. We're high school sweethearts, and that whole thing. And so really, I think it actually brought us closer. And one thing that people don't realize about money is that when you have money and you don't have debt, there are things in life that become a lot easier. We don't fight about money. We've never had an argument about money because we never had to, because we made those hard choices early to save and to pay off debt. And so for us, it's been something that we're really proud of, and it has brought us together as a couple more. That's an important thing. People don't realize how important it is to have the debt freedom and everything, but for the sanity of your family and for your relationship, it's so important. So for us, it's been a really good thing, and it's had so many different intrinsic effects. I was able to quit my job and pursue my passion, and she has fluidity to get the kind of job that she wants too, and that's important. I mean, those are all really important life things for us.
Now, you said that you all had the tough conversations early on. Talk us through, especially at the beginning of this. This is a whole lot that you all were shouldering, $40,000 of debt, and you all knocked it out in such a short amount of time. But like you said, you had to have tough conversations up front. How did you all frame that? How was it, especially in the initial stages? Because a lot of people are tuned in right now that are kind of dreading that talk with their loved one. They keep listening to the show. They keep getting inspired. They want to make this happen for themselves, but they are dreading trying to get their spouse on board. So in the initial phases of these tough talks, what was that like?
Well, I think it's like anything else, especially in marriage. You've got to be upfront. I mean, there's no, if you're trying to hide things, or if you're trying to skirt around subjects, that's just not going to work. I mean, if you want to have a really strong relationship. So for us, we've always been very open with each other. So I just told her like, hey, I'm paying off the debt. And at that time, we kept our money separate. A lot of people have asked me about that. We kept our money separate. She saved up basically half of her paycheck every 2 weeks, and so and I worked on the loans. And so for us, it was a pretty easy conversation. I mean, just telling somebody, hey, I want to be debt free now so that we can have a great life later. That's a powerful thing. And I think if you're scared to have that conversation, you shouldn't be. Whatever you think is going to be bad that comes from that is probably not going to be nearly as bad as what you really think. And what's the opportunity cost of not having the conversation and waiting? And the longer you wait to take care of the debt and to take care of the finances, I mean, it's something that has tremendous effect if you put it off. So you have to go for it. Just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned something about, because now you're debt free, you were able to leave your job and go and follow your passion. I mean, speak to somebody, somebody that's listening right now. So many people are walking around with dreams and desires and business and entrepreneurship dreams and things like that, but they can't do it because they're tied down at a job to pay bills that they don't want. So how did that feel when you were able to say, you know what, I can leave my job?
It was the best and scariest moment in my entire life. First of all, to those people, I would say if you have a dream, you need to do it. And if you need to figure out a way to get there, because, dreams are those kind of dreams. Like I was saying earlier, you only live once. We get one shot, and those kind of dreams are really valid. And you should absolutely go for it, because it is a better way to live when you're doing what you love doing. It's just the right way to go. For me, when I quit my job, basically it was just, I looked at our money situation and I just said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to jump. And so I walked in the next day and I told my boss that I was leaving. And I think that night I had a panic attack. I know for sure. Yeah. Anybody that's ever quit their job, it's terrifying, but that goes away. And then it becomes, how can I grow the business? How can I grow my brand? And so I would do it 100 times over again if I could. It's been one, outside of obviously getting married, it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me, or that I chose to do, really. So like I said, if you have a dream, you have to go for it. You got to do it. Just be smart about it. Don't quit your job like I did.
Love that. Right. So walk us through that moment when you paid off your very, very last student loan debt payment. Walk us through that moment.
I wish I had a more epic story on this, but really what happened is I messed up the payment amount by 2 cents. And so I had to make a separate 2 cent payment about a week later when I kind of added up the math and I was like, oh man, I messed that up. So, for me, it was a little bit more of just like, oh, God, the last 2 cents. But I think after that, it sank in probably about a week later when I just realized like, wow, I can't believe I just did that, and that is a great feeling. And that's a really, if you're going for debt freedom, that feeling of being debt free is a tangible thing. And that's a good thing. A lot of people discount that and they kind of don't realize that feeling is worth something. And so for me, it was awesome. It was a great feeling just, after I made the 2 cent payment.
Yeah.
Well, after you dropped those last 2 cents on them and you were completely debt free, talk to us, everybody tuned in right now, and tell us how life feels now that you're debt free compared to when you were $40,000 buried in student loan debt.
Yeah, I mean, there is that gray cloud of debt that kind of hangs over you. I mean, if you've had a lot of debt before, it's that thing that's always there. And now it really just feels like the future is completely open. I mean, anything's possible. I can take my business as far as I can work for it, as hard as I can work, and as much time as I can put into it. And it's a cool feeling when you actually literally control your own destiny, and you don't owe somebody money. And so I think it's such an important thing, and it's an important feeling. And it's just freedom. Like everybody talks about that, but when you quantify what it is like to feel free from money, that's powerful. that's really important stuff that is totally worth that struggle and the living situation and all the stuff that we were doing. I mean, it's totally worth it. So I think that it's a very powerful feeling to know that you can control your destiny. It's awesome.
What has been the biggest life lesson that you learned during your debt-free journey?
Oh, the biggest life lesson, really stop caring what other people think about you. I think we live in this culture and society where we are so concerned about what everybody else thinks. And that drives a lot of those decisions to finance the car or get the house that's too big or whatever. And so what I've kind of learned, for a long time, I didn't even talk about my story. When I first started Millennial Money Man, I never mentioned that I had rented a room from our in-laws. I was scared to talk about it. And then when I actually did start talking about that, that's when the site blew up. So it's like I've learned that you just can't worry about what other people think. You just have to figure out what you want to do in life, who you are, and just speak that message and go after those goals, and everything changes. Like it's like your entire perspective of life changes completely when you do that, and it's like a different kind of freedom, really. So that's the most important lesson that I've learned for sure.
Awesome. Now, for those who are in the fight trying to learn lessons of their own as they're trying to figure out how to get their finances in order, trying to figure out how to become debt free, are there some book recommendations that you would tell them to read and check out in order to aid them and help them figure this stuff out?
My favorite, I'll be honest with you, I'm not like a huge book reader. I haven't read every financial book, but the ones that I have read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the biggest one for me. I think that one perfectly, whatever you think about real estate investing, it doesn't really matter as much with that book. But I think whatever your views on money, of debt freedom and doing smart things with money, or kind of living the trap that everybody else lives, that book shows it perfectly. And it's, like I was telling you in the very beginning, my friend Jim, he's basically in that book, he would be the rich dad. I mean, he's an older guy, but a mentor figure. And I think that book shows that really well. And it's a really powerful book.
Awesome.
So to the people listening right now, they've heard your story and they were a little discouraged, saying, wow, I don't know if I can become debt free. What would you say to them?
You can. It's just not going to be easy. And I think that's the thing that I have to tell people the most on Millennial Money Man, or that I try to impress the most. There's this quote that I like. It's called "Pounding the Rock," and it's a longer quote, but basically it's a stone cutter is hammering away at a rock, and for months and months and months, and finally on one day, the last blow, it cracks the rock in half. And instead of saying, wow, that last one did it, he realized that it was all of the blows before that cracked the rock. So I always tell people, pound the rock. But it's not fast, and it's not easy, and it is hard, and it takes hustle, and it takes all those things, but it's possible. For the people that are in really bad debt situations, I just tell them, try to get it organized. Be a student of the game, figure out what you can do to get your payments under control so you can just get it organized. And most people are just overwhelmed with debt. Most people that I talk to that email me and say, I've got $200,000 of student loan debt. What do I do? They're just overwhelmed. And so it takes organization and it takes a lot of hard work, but it is possible. I really think it's possible for just about everybody, depending on, where they are in life.
Great advice. Great advice. So tell our audience all about millennialmoneyman.com and how they can stay connected with you, Bobby.
Well, you can always go to the site, millennialmoneyman.com. The hardest part about it is spelling millennial. So you don't have to worry about that. I've bought every misspelling of millennial that I could possibly find for Millennial Moneyman. So, and all of my social media handles are Gen Y Moneyman. So just, it's a casual site. You're not going to have to pay to get information or anything like that. It's free. So, come on, join us. I call everybody the Debt Destroyers. They're kind of the group there, the community. So it's a really cool group of people that we've been able to kind of create. So everybody's welcome.
Awesome. Bobby, we really appreciate you taking time on your busy schedule to share the details of your incredible journey to paying off $40,000 of student loans. This has really been encouraging and inspiring. So thank you for taking time to speak with us on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, very inspirational.
The fact that he got this advice from a mentor and then he didn't just kind of hear it or let it go in one ear and out the other, but he used it as fuel and the motivation to change his paradigm and to start to put some things into action to help him begin the journey to debt freedom. And now he's got a whole new career because of those decisions that he's made.
Amazing. So if you want to begin your journey to debt freedom, then make sure that you follow us over at hisandhermoney.com.
Well, guys, that's all we got for this time. It's been great. Until next time, peace.
Bye.